WNST, Towweight, the AFC and NFC championship games. And as much as we've made fun of the Jacksonville Jaguars, they will be the ones who have drawn the straw to head off to Foxborough. And, of course, the Eagles and the Vikings with Case Keenum and Nick Foles joining each other in the nightcap. This guy covers all things NFL for Bleacher Report. He's also a fantasy writer out at IDP Sharks on Twitter, as well as at Roto World and all sorts of places, as we prepare for just 3 football games left. And we have to sit around and talk about this until September. Gary Davenport joins us now from Oh, How I Hate Ohio. Hate Ohio State even more after they beat Maryland like a drum last week too, Gary.
You know, looking at the final 4 quarterbacks we have left in the 2017 season, I'm absolutely sure that this is the quartet that everyone picked before the season.
Well, we hear and say that at the Combine, at the draft, all summer long. Certainly before we had Joe Flacco around here, we didn't know what a franchise quarterback was. There are a lot of teams out there searching for one. And, 3 out of the 4 of these franchises, no one would say, well, I'll take that guy over my guy at any point. Case Keenum, however, has certainly looked the part over the course and the balance of the entire season.
Yeah, and I think we've officially reached, I think we had already officially reached the point where it was time to maybe stop doubting Case Keenum. Every week you hear, going back 2 months, there was talk of, hey, I wonder how long until Teddy Bridgewater takes over as the starter for the Vikings. And he just keeps playing and keeps playing and keeps playing. And to do what he did Sunday, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around that whole thing, it's incredible. And I look at the Vikings, of the 4 teams that are left, if there's one of the 3 that has a better than average chance of taking down the Patriots in a one-shot deal, my money would be on the Vikings because they're a balanced football team.
Well, and for the Jaguars, the imbalance has certainly shown, but you look up on the scoreboard at the end of the day, there were 45 points. Certainly the Steelers, of all the choke jobs, and we'll talk about the crazy play at the end of the game with Keenum and the miracle in Minnesota that was very reminiscent of our Jacoby Jones thing here. But boy, as bad as 4th and 12 and over the head it went for us with the Cincinnati Bengals 2 weeks ago. Everybody gets their feelings hurt when you lose, but certainly for the Steelers, this is the longest of off seasons because it was sitting there and they didn't even get a chance to go to Foxborough and play for it. It's another one of the things from a crazy weekend that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. You get 2 4th and less than a yard, and Tomlin calls a pitch play outside and a pass. I know Jacksonville's defense is good, but if anything, that's their weakness, is to run right at them. That's where they give up a few. And the onside kick, Mike Tomlin's a good coach, don't get me wrong. Obviously, he's won a Super Bowl, and his players love him. But there were just 3 or 4 just terrible decisions in that game. And then we saw the same thing happen to a lesser extent in the second game. Sean Payton made some very curious calls in that game. Once again, we're talking about a coach that won the Super Bowl. So it doesn't matter how long you've been in the NFL. There's always a chance in a big game that you're going to make a decision you're going to look back on and regret. And I think we saw quite a few of those yesterday. Oh, yeah. All weekend long. We had the chicanery of the flea flicker where the high school quarterback throws the ball a yard short of something that certainly would have changed the game. And then there's the whole thing with Minnesota at the end of the whole weekend. And I do love that we are talking about like what happened in the games and the matchups this week in defense and offense at Super Bowl, because by the time I get to Minnesota 2 weeks from now, it'll be back to CTE and the pace of the game and, fans not coming to the game. And the knee and all the other injuries, all the other ailments that ail the NFL. But for one shining weekend and for one play, certainly the Case Keenum story, keeping alive the possibility that the Vikings could be hosting and playing in a Super Bowl 3 weeks from now up there in that beautiful stadium. It's a nice little story here, and I think it's a breath of fresh air, at least for the week, that we can at least watch football and have football be the story instead of everything around football be such a pigpen black cloud,
Oh, absolutely. And there are a ton of great storylines going into the championship games, whether it's the Jaguars and that incredible defense and or the Vikings and Case Keenum and, their 3rd quarterback of the year. And here they are 1 game away from being the first team in NFL history to play a Super Bowl in their home stadium. And then you've got the Eagles trying to overcome the loss of their MVP quarterback better than halfway through the season, and can Nick Foles get them to the Super Bowl? And then, of course, the Patriots, the team everybody loves to hate because they've been in the AFC Championship game now for 7 years in a row. So, yeah, there's no shortage of stuff to talk about between the lines this week, and that's a refreshing change of pace.
We certainly did our part in beating the Patriots once up there. Gary Davenport joining us here. He is IDP Sharks out on Twitter. That's a fantasy football name out there. And, of course, out at Bleacher Report, monitoring all things NFL. As around here, we draft 16th and get ready for the offseason. But lo and behold, the Jaguars are the team that is got to be the surprise of all surprise. I mean, we knew the Vikings were good. I think we realized early on that the Eagles were going to be better and that they had drafted well and hired a good coach and had a good defensive coordinator and had a franchise quarterback. But the Jaguars with Blake Bortles and the problems that he's had and the way their defense travels, they beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh twice this year. They were beating us 41-0. I guess it's the decal on the side of the helmets and the less than storied history here over the last decade, and the fact that Blake Bortles still throws the ball like Billy Kilmer that leads you to say, really, they're going to be the ones that go into Foxborough? I mean, it almost looks like the pigs being led to slaughter, or in this case, the cats being led to slaughter up there in Foxborough.
Yeah, I have a hard time imagining the Jaguars winning that game, but they do have one thing going for them that, historically speaking, has been very advantageous for opponents taking on the Tom Brady New England Patriots, in that they can get after the quarterback with just that front four. They don't need to send linebackers or safeties and blitzes. And with that secondary, if Calais Campbell and Yannick Ngakoue and Malik Jackson can get after Brady, they can stay in the game. It's going to come down to, can Bortles make 2 or 3 throws that he just absolutely has to make? And that could be the difference in the ballgame between a 3-4 point game or things getting away from them, and we see a repeat of what the Patriots did to Tennessee last week.
Well, I think it's a lot harder to doubt them, Gary, because they were not frightened getting off the bus, and they were not frightened at the cold weather and all those other things. I mean, if anything, the Campbells and the Ramseys and the Jacksons, if you said, they sort of look the part. They look like they belong, that side of the ball. Now, running the football and how they're going to make it 3rd and 12 ever, I don't know, but certainly they look the part defensively to be able to go to Foxborough and at least maybe make that game interesting in the fourth quarter if they can force a couple of turnovers and some 3-and-outs and force a punt and do something on special teams and run the ball a little bit. I mean, I could see a scenario, but everything's going to have to go perfectly for the Jaguars.
Yeah, and I think we see that a little bit in the point spread, that even Vegas, they have a little bit of faith in Jacksonville more than they did in Tennessee, but we're still looking at a 9.5 point spread because, like you said, the Jaguars are just going to have to do everything where they have zero margin for error, because in the blink of an eye in Gillette Stadium against the New England Patriots, they can put 17 points on the board and the game will be over.
Gary Davenport joining us here. IDP Sharks is the way to find him out on Twitter. We haven't talked since the Ravens season ended. I know I was fetching you 2 weeks ago after the loss to the Bengals, and I know you had some off-the-field issues. Glad that you could join us here this week. But wrap up the Ravens for me, Gary. I mean, we've talked about it throughout the course of the season, from a fantasy perspective and where you are, and you want Justin Tucker to be your kicker and all that stuff. But I think we go into this offseason looking at where the Steelers are, looking at where the Jaguars are coming, and where the Patriots have been, unless there's a real breakup there, as was predicted by ESPN 2 weeks ago. You look at this and you say, well, how are they going to make this jump from being this 8-8, 9-7, kicking it around team to being that next team that can go out and dominate, maybe win 11 or 12 games? And will that happen with Flacco, with Suggs, with Harbaugh? Those are the questions for the offseason now.
To me, the $64 question, I mean, yes, you can add personnel at the skill positions offensively, and you can tinker with the defense a little bit, although I don't think there's much there you really need to do. Don't fix what isn't broken. But it's all, at the end of the day, it's all going to come down to Joe Flacco making the throws. And when he was able to do that for stretches this past season, the Ravens looked really good some games. Then there are others where there's just no passing offense at all, and you're essentially the Jacksonville Jaguars only the defense isn't quite as good. And that's the sort of thing that's going to lead you to be a 9-7 football team. So, I mean, it sounds cliche to lay it all on the quarterback, but where the Ravens are concerned, that they just need Joe Flacco to play better. And they can win 10, 11 games, no problem.
Well, I guess at this point, there's 28 other teams, 27 other teams that are feeling not so good about their season. And, obviously the way it ended for the Saints, they've got to go pound sand on that. Obviously for the Steelers over the weekend when you get beaten like that. But for teams out there without a quarterback, for teams out there without draft positioning, you're out there in Ohio where on the north side of the state, they kept Hugh Jackson. Everybody's pissed. On the south side of the state, they kept Marvin Lewis. Everybody's pissed. And I would say this continuity thing that some fans may think they want, where I thought we were going to have 10 jobs change hands this month. A lot more teams have sort of settled back into saying maybe we should play on what we have right now because what we have, we came close enough. Most teams think they're closer than they probably are.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, we just saw it with the coaching carousel that wasn't nearly as round and round they go as we thought it was going to be. There was a lot of the devil you know is better than the devil you don't, and teams sticking with guys. I mean, there were a couple exceptions. Jim Caldwell did okay in Detroit. That wasn't enough to save his job. But for the most part, I mean, Marvin Lewis is still going to be in Cincinnati. Hugh Jackson is still going to be in Cleveland. There's just not a lot of teams that seem, not a lot of organizations that seem really eager to, quote-unquote, blow things up. And on one hand, I think teams had maybe getting to the point that they were getting a little too hair-trigger when it came to that sort of thing. The Browns are an excellent example, flipping coaches and general managers every 2 years. But I also think there's a flip side of that where things can stagnate, and that's how you turn into what the Cincinnati Bengals are right now, a 7-9 to 9-7 football team that's neither really good nor really bad. And in some ways, I think that's even worse than going 3-13. Because it's so hard to get out of that mediocrity once you're kind of mired there. Because you're always picking in the middle of the round. Everything just stagnates. And I think we're seeing that with some franchises, and we may see it with a few more. The so-so teams will stay so-so.
Gary Davenport covering all things NFL out at Bleacher Report. This portion of our WNST programming brought to you by our friends at GNA Coney Island Hot Dogs in Highlandtown. The best hot dogs in the world. Stop by and see Andy and visit them at GNARestaurant.com. Also brought to you by our friends King Discount Liquors. Give the King a ring. Lottery, beer, booze, and the best prices in Baltimore. Get on over to Rosedale and Pulaski Highway and say hello over there. Get yourself a six-pack or pick up a bottle of tequila or something like that to keep you warm here on these winter nights. Gary, last thing, getting out to Minnesota 2 weeks from now. We're going to be out there for the Super Bowl. This Vikings story and the skull thing and what it would look like, it certainly is not lost on me that this may be the only opportunity, 52 years in, that we have a team going on the road to Philly favored here with a chance to be the home team. That will be something that the Patriots have never done, actually beating a home team in a Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, and it's a great story. It's going to be very interesting to see how the NFC Championship game plays out. You've got two really good defenses. I don't think either the Eagles or the Vikings are going to have much success at all on the ground. So it's essentially going to come down to Nick Foles versus Case Keenum. Whichever of those quarterbacks plays better and avoids the kind of mistakes that can turn a close, fairly low-scoring game, which is what I expect that to be, that's going to be the difference. And one of those teams is going to go on to the Super Bowl. And right now, I look at the Vikings, I think they're going to win.
It's fascinating for me. We talk about these quarterbacks and franchise quarterbacks and how much a Joe Flacco or Kirk Cousins or pick your guy, how much they cost you. And certainly the 49ers are going to find that out with Garoppolo and their salary cap situation as well. But it's defense for the Vikings. It's defense for the Eagles. It's defense for the Patriots always. And certainly the Jaguars lead with their defense. Maybe Ozzie and Eric didn't get it so wrong with these lopsided defensive drafts in that is what's represented right now.
A good defense can mask a lot of deficiencies on a football team, and the old adage that defense wins championships. I mean, it's not inaccurate. I know that in today's NFL, the rules benefit the offense more than ever, and teams are more pass-happy than ever before. But you look at the last 10, 15 Super Bowls, it's not hard to figure out as you look through who won and who lost that the team that had the better defense in that game is usually the team that's going to come out with a big shiny trophy and confetti falling on them. And that may well be the case again this year, although you look at the Patriots and you think to yourself, that's probably the worst of the four defenses, but they make plays when they need to, and they're, fifth or sixth in the NFL in scoring defense, which is really the only stat that matters. So a lot of really good defenses left among the final four.
Cool, man. Well, we'll send everybody out to follow you. What does a fantasy guy like you do here in the off season? You just embrace the draft, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll get through, I'll do a little NFL playoff stuff because people will do the playoff fantasy football leagues, this little last hurrah before the off season. And then, it'll be right into the rookie class for dynasty leagues and stuff like that. Before you know it, it's May, early June. You're getting ready for draft season again.
Dude, I've been to Lambeau. I've been to Cleveland and Pittsburgh before Christmas. I'm about to spend 9 days in Minnesota, and then I'm headed out to Indianapolis. I'm going to be like an honorary Midwesterner by the time the spring thaw hits around here. But drafting 16th, and certainly for the Ravens, this is going to be a draft that everyone's going to be focused on because they have to pick some winners here. They got to make the football team better.
Oh, absolutely. And it's going to be a really big offseason for Ozzie Newsome and John Harbaugh. You're starting to hear some grumbles out of Baltimore that people you wouldn't have thought you'd heard 2 or 3 years ago, but missing the playoffs 3 years, and when those expectations get raised, so do the stakes.
Hey, man, always a pleasure to join you and have you join us, and Happy New Year to you. We'll be watching the games this weekend and following you out on Twitter, all right?
Enjoy the games and the traveling.
Gary Davenport, he is IDP Sharks out on Twitter as well as at Bleacher Report and Roto World. You can find me out in the Buy at Toyota.com Audio Vaults 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear there, and you can listen to what you want, when you want, where you want, how you want. And I am delivering Purple Rain 2. Its 5th anniversary coming up here in 2 weeks. We're going to put Ray Lewis in the aforementioned Hall of Fame in Pro Football Canton, Ohio. We're going to be going to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, doing some baseball games. Big trip, nasty at WNST.net. Throw me a note on that. I'll be getting that on sale later on in the week as well. And Chapter 4 of Purple Rain 2 about Ray Lewis, that's now out at WNST.net. A chapter a day to relive it all 5 years later. I'm out on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. And Purple Rain 2, a chapter a day every day in the morning newspaper. It is all brought to you by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it is still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, guaranteed. If there's any breaking news, and if the Orioles actually deal Manny Machado, you'll get it first on the WNST Tech Service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday from 3 until 5, driving you home. It is the SSV on WNST. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.